He called her his wife at 2 p.m., but by 11 p.m. that same night, he was already with another woman. This isn't grief, it's betrayal. And the truth about 6ix9ine's reaction to Ariella's death will shock you. Imagine losing your life in the most tragic way possible, and instead of being honored, your memory is turned into content. That's exactly what happened to Ariella Langosta, and the man responsible is Tekashi 6ix9ine. Police found Ariella shot in her car, but what Tekashi 6ix9ine did just hours after her death has left fans speechless. Was it grief or pure exploitation? Things have taken a dark turn in 6ix9ine's world, and this time it's not about music or trolling, it's about a tragedy that has shaken his entire fan base. His girlfriend, Ariella Langosta, was murdered. And instead of mourning in silence, the headlines that followed painted an even more disturbing picture. While Ariella's death was still fresh, 6ix9ine was already seen with another woman. For many, it wasn't surprising. This is the same man accused of cheating on his ex and treating her poorly, the same man who's built a reputation on chaos. But this cold move after Ariella's passing left fans wondering if he knows more than he's saying. Ariella wasn't just another social media name. She was a 33-year-old influencer, a model, a mother, and a woman who worked hard to build something real. With nearly 700,000 followers, she stood out not because she was flashy or scandalous, but because she was relatable. People connected with her because she shared her life honestly. She posted about her struggles with parenthood, her journey of co-parenting, and her daily hustle as a businesswoman trying to provide for her family. Friends say Ariella had big dreams. She wasn't satisfied with just being an influencer, she wanted to build an empire. She talked often about launching her own fashion line, partnering with major brands, and creating something that would give her and her children security for years to come. Those who knew her personally say she was motivated by love, especially her kids. Everything she did, every post, every deal, every sleepless night working on her goals, was for them. But Ariella's life was more than just numbers on a screen. She was described as warm, funny, and down-to-earth. The kind of person who could make you laugh even on your worst day. Friends say she had a way of making everyone around her feel seen, whether they were close family or just casual acquaintances. To her followers, she was an inspiration. To her family, she was irreplaceable. That's what makes her story so heartbreaking. Because just as she was starting to turn her dreams into reality, her life was cut short. Ariella's death wasn't just another headline, it was the loss of a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a friend. For her children, it meant losing the woman who loved them most. For her parents, it meant living with a hole that can never truly be filled. And for her fans, it meant losing a voice that had always been honest and real. What hurts even more for those close to her is how quickly her memory was overshadowed. Instead of being remembered as the hardworking mother and creator she was, her name got pulled into chaos and controversy. The man who claimed to love her, Tekashi 6ix9ine, turned her passing into content. While her family was planning a funeral, he was back online, posting outrageous videos, promoting himself, and using the attention from her death to boost his relevance. This wasn't grief, it was exploitation. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side, a family mourning a devastating loss. On the other, a man treating that loss like just another headline to capitalize on. To many, it felt like Ariella's worth as a human being was dismissed in favor of likes, clicks, and streams. Her friends and supporters were outraged. They flooded social media, calling out the hypocrisy and disrespect. They shared memories of Ariella, the woman she truly was, trying to protect her legacy from being reduced to just another scandal in Tekashi's long history of manufactured drama. But for her family, the pain went even deeper. They not only had to grieve Ariella's death, but also watch as her memory was used for someone else's personal gain. And yet, despite everything, Ariella's impact hasn't faded. Her story serves as a reminder of what gets lost when fame and controversy drown out humanity. She was more than an influencer. She was a mother building a better future, a creator chasing her dreams, and a woman who inspired thousands by being real in a world that often rewards the fake. Ariella deserved to be remembered for the life she lived, not the drama that followed her death. She deserved justice, respect, and space for her family to heal. Instead, she became a symbol of something much darker, the way our culture often exploits tragedy instead of honoring it. But those who loved her continue to tell her story. They refused to let her memory be reduced to clicks and headlines. Because Ariella wasn't disposable. She wasn't content. She was a woman who mattered, and her story deserves to be told in full, not as part of someone else's performance, but as her own legacy. But all of that came to a sudden, violent end. Ariella's life was cut short when police discovered her inside her car on a busy road just north of the Bronx. She had been shot, and investigators quickly concluded this was no random act. She had been targeted. Yet, even with the severity of the crime, there were no immediate arrests, no suspects brought in, and no answers for her grieving family. All that remained was heartbreak and a community left searching for reasons. The tragedy alone was devastating, but what followed in the hours after her death made the wound even deeper. Tekashi 6ix9ine, the man who had been publicly connected to Ariella, took to social media almost immediately. He posted emotional words, calling her his wife and declaring that New York would never be the same without her. To fans scrolling by, it seemed like the kind of raw, heartfelt grief you might expect from someone who had just lost the love of his life. But for people who knew the reality, those words didn't ring true. They felt staged, almost like a performance designed for attention. And it wasn't long before the mask slipped. That very night, mere hours after posting his tribute, witnesses reported seeing 6ix9ine at a Manhattan nightclub. He wasn't grieving quietly or keeping to himself. Instead, he was laughing, drinking, and getting close to other women, as if nothing had happened. For Ariella's loved ones, the contrast was unbearable. While they sat in shock, struggling to process the loss of a daughter, sister, and mother, the man who had just declared his undying love for her was already back to his old habits. To many, it confirmed what they had long suspected, that for 6ix9ine, tragedy is less about loss and more about leverage. Her death became content, a way to pull sympathy, boost engagement, and keep his name in the headlines. The timing, the contradictions, and the blatant disregard for Ariella's dignity left a bitter taste. It wasn't just about the crime itself anymore, it was about how quickly a life full of promise was reduced to fuel for someone else's public image. Ariella deserved more than that. She deserved truth, respect, and space for her story to be told without exploitation. The betrayal hit fans like a punch. How could he post a tribute in the afternoon, then party the same night? Security footage and photos showed him with his hands wrapped around another woman, whispering into her ear as though nothing had happened. For many, this wasn't grief, it was damage control. Sources claim his team quickly reached out to gossip outlets within 24 hours of Ariella's death, trying to frame him as the heartbroken partner rather than the distant boyfriend Ariella had been struggling with. In fact, texts later revealed she'd been trying to distance herself from him. Friends say she was exhausted by the non-stop drama, the security risks, and the feeling that simply being with 6ix9ine made her a target. Some even believe she was ready to end things altogether. And yet, after she was gone, he treated her memory as if it were just another headline to spin. For 6ix9ine, loyalty has never come before ego. His own ex once said it best, "He always knows the right thing to say, but never lives by it." Ariella's death showed that again. The choice between mourning and moving on wasn't even a choice for him, it was instinct. In the end, the timeline speaks louder than any Instagram post. A heartfelt tribute at 2:47 p.m. A night out by 11:30 p.m. A public image carefully managed while a woman's legacy was quietly disrespected. That's the story fans are left with, a story not just of tragedy, but of betrayal. What makes this story even harder to swallow is the way 6ix9ine seemed to treat Ariella's death, not as a personal tragedy, but as another headline to exploit. While her family begged for justice and her children tried to make sense of a world without their mother, he was already figuring out how to twist the narrative in his favor. The man who constantly talks about loyalty has never shown it to the people who actually mattered in his life. And maybe we shouldn't be shocked. This is the same 6ix9ine who bragged openly about snitching, claiming he had no regrets and even wore it like a badge of honor. For him, betrayal has never been a shameful act, it's part of the brand. But the most disturbing part of all this is how Ariella's murder became yet another storyline in the Tekashi controversy machine. Her death should have been about seeking justice, honoring her legacy, and standing by her family. Instead, it was turned into content, another messy chapter in his ongoing circus. Her memory wasn't preserved, it was packaged for likes, views, and engagement. To understand why fans are so outraged, you have to look at the bigger picture. 6ix9ine has always built his career on betrayal. It's a pattern so obvious it feels rehearsed. Trippie gave him his platform, put him on stages, and gave him protection. He repaid them by testifying against them in court. His ex, Sarah Molina, stood by him in his early struggles. He humiliated her on social media, cheated openly, and discarded her when success came. Industry peers co-signed his rise. He turned around and sparked beefs for clicks. Over and over, the cycle repeats. Find people who can help, use them, then betray them when it benefits him. Sarah, the mother of his child, has spoken about what life with 6ix9ine was really like. She described enduring emotional abuse, watching him turn their private life into a public spectacle, and feeling less like a partner and more like a prop in a show. Sound familiar? It's almost identical to what happened with Ariella, another woman caught in his orbit, only to be disrespected and discarded. And yet, some fans believe his behavior after Ariella's murder goes beyond simple coldness. They suspect it was calculated. Her death was no random act. It was an execution-style shooting carried out in her car, with no suspects and no arrests. That detail alone raises questions. Was she targeted because of her association with him? Did his controversies make her a mark? Instead of demanding answers or cooperating fully with investigators, 6ix9ine seemed more focused on keeping the spotlight on himself. The timeline says it all. One day, he's posting emotional tributes calling her his wife. Within 48 hours, he's back in the clubs, seen with new women, laughing, partying, and behaving as if nothing had happened. It wasn't mourning. It wasn't love. It was just another performance in the endless drama he thrives on. It was almost as if Ariella's death became just another storyline in the never-ending 6ix9ine reality show. Behind the scenes, industry insiders revealed something chilling. While the world thought he was grieving, his team was already mapping out a comeback strategy. They didn't see tragedy, they saw opportunity. Those emotional posts calling her his wife and mourning her loss, according to sources, they weren't genuine displays of heartbreak. They were carefully staged PR moves designed to make him look vulnerable, human, and sympathetic after months of fading from relevance. Fans who once defended him suddenly began to realize the cost of supporting someone who treats relationships as disposable. The evidence only grew worse. Screenshots and photos started circulating online showing 6ix9ine smiling, laughing, and draped over other women within days of Ariella's funeral. In one photo, taken at what looked like a private party, he had his arm wrapped around someone new, hardly the image of a man devastated by loss. And it wasn't just the speed of his rebound, it was the intent behind it. Sources claim that while he was posting tearful tributes online, he was privately texting multiple women, using his grief as a pickup line. Phone records allegedly show him reaching out within hours of announcing Ariella's death, saying he needed comfort and someone to lean on. One of those women, who later spoke anonymously, described how he never mentioned mourning during their time together. Instead, he bragged about his wealth, his music, and his comeback plans. When she later realized the timing, that she had been with him just hours after his girlfriend was murdered, she said it made her sick. The shift in his online behavior told the same story. Instead of keeping Ariella's memory alive, he quickly pivoted back to his old tricks, posting outrageous content to stir controversy. It was almost like he was testing his audience. How far could he push before the sympathy wore off? This is the pattern with 6ix9ine. Every relationship becomes content. Every betrayal becomes entertainment. Every tragedy turns into marketing material. But using a woman's death as fuel for a publicity stunt, that crossed a line even his longtime critics didn't expect. What makes it worse is how deliberate it all appears. This wasn't a man collapsing under the weight of grief and making reckless choices. This was a calculated move. The tributes, the nightclub appearances, the women, the social media strategy, it was all orchestrated to maximize attention while dodging accountability. The timeline is damning. On the day Ariella was killed, he posted his tribute at 2:47 p.m. By 4:15, he was already texting his manager about controlling the narrative. By 6:30, he was contacting club promoters about appearances to cope. And by 11:30 that same night, he was photographed at a Manhattan nightclub looking carefree. That's not mourning, that's performance. Insiders say his team had been struggling to figure out how to make him relevant again. His streams were down, his spotlight was fading, and there was growing concern about his career. Then came Ariella's murder. As horrific as it sounds, her death became the opportunity. They needed a chance to rebrand him with a sympathy arc. And that's what makes this betrayal so devastating. It wasn't just about infidelity. It wasn't just about moving on too quickly. It was about using Ariella's memory as leverage, turning a human life into clout and proving once again that for 6ix9ine, loyalty and love are nothing more than tools for his own survival. The so-called morning posts 6ix9ine shared weren't grief. They were theater. This is a man who has turned trolling into an art form, who treats every relationship like content for his show. And sadly, it isn't new. Years ago, he admitted that one of his girlfriends hated his sudden fame, yet he still dragged their relationship into the spotlight for clicks and clout. The women who've loved him, the ones who knew him as Daniel and not Tekashi, have consistently ended up collateral damage in his relentless chase for relevance. The pattern paints a troubling picture: a man who sees human connection as disposable, who performs emotions instead of feeling them, and who treats every tragedy as raw material for his brand. Psychologists who've studied his public behavior point to disturbing traits: an inability to sustain real relationships, a habit of exploiting others' pain for personal gain, and a lack of empathy for anyone he hurts. These aren't just bad habits. They're warning signs of something deeper, even sociopathic. The timeline around Ariela's death makes that crystal clear. While her family planned her funeral, Tekashi was already posting louder, more provocative content, almost as if her murder was just another excuse to put himself back in the spotlight. This wasn't mourning, it was exploitation. Into Ariela's death has stalled, complicated by fear, retaliation, and the circus of media attention. Meanwhile, Tekashi stays silent about her case, but loud about himself. The pattern is undeniable. Trippie Redd gave him a platform, he flipped. Sarah Molina stood by him, he humiliated her. Ariela died, and he moved on before the candles at her vigil had burned out. This isn't the story of a man grieving. It's the story of someone who doesn't value loyalty because betrayal pays better. And when you put all the evidence together, one truth becomes painfully clear: Tekashi 6ix9ine may know how to create chaos, but he doesn't know how to love. 6ix9ine has never truly seen people as people. To him, they're not individuals deserving love or respect, they're resources. Something to use until there's nothing left. Ariela's death should have been a moment of reflection, a time for grief, a call for justice. Instead, it became just another opportunity for self-promotion. Her death didn't change Tekashi. It exposed him. It showed the world exactly who he is, a man who treats relationships, heartbreak, and even death as content. The woman he once called his wife became nothing more than a stepping stone in his endless chase for relevance. And now, the fans who once defended him are realizing the real cost of supporting someone who sees human connection as disposable. The fallout has been devastating. Ariela's family has had to endure not only the unbearable pain of losing her, but also the circus Tekashi turned her memory into. Her children will grow up knowing their mother's death was exploited for attention by the man who claimed to love her. Her friends have had to watch her legacy cheapened for clicks and views. But this story is bigger than Tekashi. It's about what happens when we give fame and platforms to people who constantly prove they don't deserve them. It's about the cost of tolerating behavior that dehumanizes and exploits the most vulnerable moments of people's lives. 6ix9ine's response to Ariela's death is a case study in everything broken about celebrity culture today: the commodification of tragedy, the exploitation of grief, and the total absence of basic decency. The message it sends to women is chilling. If you're close to him, your pain becomes his content. Your tragedy becomes his opportunity. Even your death can be turned into his comeback story. And yet, he's faced no real consequences. While Ariela's family grieves and her children face life without their mother, Tekashi continues to profit. His streams rose. His social media engagement spiked. He stayed relevant by using one of the most heartless strategies imaginable. That isn't just disappointing, it's devastating. Because when you strip away the rainbow hair, the trolling, and the headlines, you're left with a man who couldn't even respect the memory of someone he claimed to love. A man who turned a woman's murder into a marketing plan. A man who has proven, time and time again, that no bond is sacred and no tragedy is off-limits if it keeps him in the spotlight. The truth is simple: Tekashi 6ix9ine represents the ugliest side of fame. He's so addicted to controversy, so dependent on shock value, that he's lost any trace of humanity. Ariela's death should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it became just another scene in his never-ending performance of fake emotions and manufactured drama.